We often imagine World War II as fought in some foreign field. But it was here, on the home front, that the battle really began.
As the Allied war machine geared up to take on the Nazis, our green and pleasant land was transformed, bristling with airfields, military camps and secret bases.
There's not much left on the surface today, but we're on a mission to unearth the truth about Britain's wartime past.
Oh, brilliant. That is totally awesome.
Suggs gets a taste for what it was really like to be there.
While relic hunter Stephen Taylor searches for the hidden historical treasures that reveal the bravery of the men and women who defied the Nazis.
This belongs to somebody who fought in the war, and it's important to get things like this back to the family from where they came.
In this episode, we're heading to the secret heart of Britain's war effort. A vast national network of depots and underground bases used to store millions of tons of ammunition. We'll be finding out just how dangerous munition storage could be.
Armageddon of biblical proportions.
And discovering how our buried wartime past can still pack a punch even today. We are the World War II treasure hunters.
Imagine, you've just declared war on Germany. You're manufacturing thousands of tons of bombs, ammo and explosives. But there's just one problem. Where on earth are you going to store it all?
To stand any chance against the Nazi war machine, Britain needed not just soldiers, but vast amounts of ammo and military hardware. Our factories kicked in, and over the next 6 years turned out 47,000 tanks, over 1 million machine guns, 950,000 tons of high explosive bombs, and 9.4 billion rounds of ammunition. But finding space to store all this ordnance soon became a major headache.
During the war, Gowendon Park in Leicestershire was requisitioned as an ammunition depot. Over 30,000 tons of ordnance was stashed away in the surrounding area. And we want to find out just what it took to guard, manage and ship thousands of tons of deadly munitions.
And discover the untold story of how Britain stored a whole war's worth of munitions in its own backyard.
Right, Stephen.
How are we doing, Suggs?
Very good indeed.
Excellent.
Lovely day, peaceful pastoral Gowendon Park. But things must have been very different around here in 1940.
Yeah, this place was requisitioned by the government in the 1940s. This place became part of the Royal Army Ordnance Corps. This was number 32 ammunition sub-depot, and these guys dealt with over 30,000 tons of ordnance and ammunition.
Because, of course, the Royal Army Ordnance Corps were in charge of making sure the whole British Army were getting all the kit that they needed. So important stuff was going on here.
Yeah, really important stuff. It came in from abroad or from the factories in England. They stored it and then shipped it out. I mean, this enormous supply chain to get to the front line.
So what are you hoping to find specifically?
It'd be really nice if we could find something that showed they were here. So any bits of kit, things like that. But there is a chance we're going to find live ordnance. These guys dealt with 30,000 tons of it. Some of it might still be here.
But do let me know. I'll stay on my tiptoes behind you.
If I suddenly start running, don't ask why, just follow, all right?
Of course, the house isn't here anymore, but are you hoping to find any evidence of that?
Yeah, the squire. Very nice chap.
Oh, yes, you've been hanging out with the squire, have you?
I have.
Dry sherry?
No, cup of Earl Grey.
Hey, what?
Really nice chap. Back during the war, he had some very nice lead statuettes on top of his building that mysteriously went missing. The army apparently took them off because they were taking pot shots at them. So we've got to go and see if we can find the squire's statuettes as well.
Well, I do hope you do find the squire's statuettes.
With my team of archaeologists and detectorists, we're starting our search for relics in an area where the Royal Army Ordnance Corps had their barracks. I want to find evidence of their daily lives and their military operation here. Today, the estate is earmarked for a big housing development. So this is our last chance to unearth its wartime relics before they're buried forever. Before long, the team are digging up some amazing finds.
Sea of flags, look at them.
1948, maybe.
Oh, buckle. That'll do. Boot polish. That is a cracker.
Some webbing buckles and remains of a 303 cartridge. This host of military items includes webbing buckles, buttons and numerous cartridge cases left by the men based here. Soon, however, we found an even more revealing relic.
Oh, wow.
What you got, Eddie?
It's a cap badge, mate.
Ah, Royal Army Ordnance Corps! Oh, that is fantastic, look at that.
Yeah, that's why we're here, mate.
That is exactly why we're here. That is superb, that's in really good condition as well.
Yeah, it's even got the clasp at the back.
For putting it on his cap.
Losing a cap badge, they'd be on a charge.
They would have been, but you've found it now, so maybe we can get him off his charge.
Yeah.
That is flipping amazing. This beautifully preserved cap badge proves beyond doubt that Garendon was home to the Royal Army Ordnance Corps. But we soon have evidence that there may also have been another unit active on the site.
Tim, got a cap badge here.
This separate cap badge is from the Royal Army Service Corps, the unit responsible for keeping troops supplied with food and provisions. Together, these two badges suggest Garendon played a vital role in ensuring Allied troops were both armed and fed. The men who worked here during the war may not have been on the front line, but handling thousands of tons of live ammunition still came with potentially deadly risks.
To find out more, I'm on my way to the site of the largest explosion ever to take place on British soil. "20 miles west of Garendon, the countryside near the village of Hanbury was home to one of the largest munitions depots in Britain, the secret underground base of RAF Ford. In 1944, however, it was to become the site of a horrific incident that showed just how lethal work in munitions storage could be. James Major is an expert on the area's hidden wartime past.
So, James, here we are in a beautiful, idyllic, pastoral bit of the world. Very hard to imagine a secret military installation here.
Well, this was just ordinary farmland, but below the farmland was a worked-out gypsum mine. And in 1937, the MOD surveyed it all and decided this was a good place to store bombs underground.
Which, of course, makes a lot of sense, because you're talking about very high explosives, and presumably the thought was, you know, underground would be the safest place for them.
Well, there were some catastrophic mistakes made. You see that gap in the fence just across the way there?
Oh, yeah.
The ground just falls away.
Yes.
And behind that is the most enormous crater.
This vast hole, torn into the countryside, over 200 feet deep and 3/4 of a mile in circumference, is a chilling reminder of one of Britain's worst ever wartime accidents. An explosion ripped through the vast underground chambers of RAF Ford, detonating almost its entire stock of munitions. 70 people were killed. A photo taken a few years after the explosion reveals the sheer scale of the blast. The explosion was a fifth as powerful as the Hiroshima bomb. So how did it happen?
I mean, how it happened was a catalogue of events that built up during the war. They were short of staff, it was full to capacity, and so the operations were left to be looked after by less experienced people.
With an exhausted, overstretched workforce, it was only a matter of time before a mistake was made. In the end, the tragedy hinged on a simple error. made by one worker when making safe a returned aircraft bomb.
An armourer was working on a returned bomb. It should have been done in isolation, but because it was in the proximity of other bombs, by the sympathetic detonation, it caused a chain reaction.
Like letting a rocket off in a fireworks factory.
The scale of the explosion was made even worse by the fact that by 1944, the base was packed far beyond its original capacity. In this final stage of the war, initiatives such as Operation Hurricane saw 1,000 bombers drop more than 10,000 tons of bombs over Germany in a single day. German anti-aircraft defences were overwhelmed by the endless stream of bombers. It was a very effective strategy. But at RAF Full, it meant a fatal overstretching of resources that had a devastating effect on those living quiet rural lives on the land above.
At the far side of the crater was a farm called Upper Castle Hayes, and that completely disappeared. There wasn't a brick end or a bent of straw to denote there was ever a farm there. My father recalls seeing it actually happen when he stepped out of one of the farm buildings, which isn't that far away. He could see what looked like an atomic explosion. We've seen them on the television. He said it was just like that, but he wasn't miles away. He could see rocks the size of a house being overtaken by an oak tree or whatever.
Incredible, isn't it? Incredible, incredible. I mean, it's like, you know, Armageddon of biblical proportions, isn't it? On all sides, yeah, yeah.
The underground base at RAF Fuld has long since been closed off. But amateur footage filmed a few years ago shows the scale of this vast underground dump. These empty tunnels are now a silent memorial to those who lost their lives on that fateful day.
Back at the dig, our search for evidence of the munitions depot at Garendon is still going strong. We found a host of evidence of the day-to-day life of the men who policed this depot. Someone, however, is keen to remind me that that's not all we're meant to be finding here.
Well, it's lovely, and I'm glad to see you're off to a bit of a good start. But come on, mate, where's the juicy stuff? Where's the old squire's statuettes and unexploded bombs, eh?
Well, yeah, I've got to find them. I'm going to go for a bit of a walk and have a look, see what I can do.
Good luck, see you later.
See you later. We know that Garendon was home to an ammunition sub-depot, but so far we've found no evidence of any storage structures. So where were the munitions being stored? I'm convinced that somewhere on this estate there's evidence that can help us solve this bizarre mystery. Definitely got evidence now of things going bang up the top end of this field. This is a big explosion.
We're at Garendon Park, a grand country estate transformed during the war into an ammunition depot for the army.
So far, our investigations have revealed no mass storage facilities or underground munitions bunkers. So where did the men stationed here store their deadly stash of ordnance? This map in the old lodge at Garendon could offer a vital clue as to what went on here during the war. To help me decode its secrets, I've come to meet someone with some insider knowledge. Hi, Peter.
Hello there. Good to see you.
And you? Peter Peters was a member of the Royal Army Ordnance Corps, stationed at Garendon just after the war from 1947. During the war, obviously, this place was active as a Royal Army Ordnance Corps depot. So what did they actually do here during the war?
Ammunition sub-depots were opened up all over the country. There's one at Buckingham and this one here, number 32, where we stored, during the war, accumulated 30,000 tons of ammunition and explosives. And this was all over the north of Leicestershire, in field shelters, little corrugated iron field shelters, on all the roadside verges, on private land, on farmland, and in woodlands.
So that map there then, so all of these roads that are in green and all the areas in green, they were basically storage areas for your ammunition?
Absolutely, yes.
Wow. So why have all this ammunition down country lanes?
A big central ammunition depot could be a very good target for the Luftwaffe to bomb. So a lot of ammunition was dispersed all over the country to dilute it in a way.
Today, it's hard to believe that countryside all over Britain was converted into one giant munitions store. But back then, it made perfect sense. The Nissen huts that housed the thousands of tons of weaponry and high explosives may not have been very secure, but they were spread out and hidden from German spy planes. This dispersed storage method also served another purpose.
It was all ready
Yeah.
for a last-ditch defence of the nation against a German invasion. Hopefully, if we had to back away from the south coast because of a German invasion, all this stuff would be readily available for the army to use.
After the war, however, the continued presence of munitions throughout the British countryside posed a major security risk, with many concerned that terrorists or criminal elements might simply steal the ordnance. So one of the Royal Army Ordnance Corps' main roles at Garendon after the war was to collect and process the enormous amount of munitions still left in the countryside. So you were here at this site, 1947. You remember the Royal Army Ordnance Corps?
Yes, Corporal Ammunition Examiner.
Excellent.
Qualified with distinction in 1947. Then I was posted out here, having qualified, to dispose of all the ammunition and explosives in practically the whole of Leicestershire. And I personally was responsible for the disposal of about 8,000 tons of that. Well, we had to inspect it all, round by round, and then they were put into various categories. But every now and then you'd come across something that was dodgy. If it was extremely dangerous, delicate and sensitized, walk across the field from the lab and put it into a little crater where we used to blow it up.
Good heavens. So I'm going to pick your brains. I've got an old map here, so does this ring any bells? Can you give me some idea?
Yes, I think that was the motor transport yard, but the main demolition pit was about there.
Peter's account gives us vital new evidence about the Army's activities at Garendon. Not only was it used as a depot to distribute ordnance during the war, but it was also used as a centre to dispose of ammunition after 1945. Peters pointed out an area to the east of the estate that may have been used as a blast pit to explode faulty ordnance. If his memory is correct, it could prove a perfect place to focus our dig. Following the discussion with Peter about his demolition pit, what we've done is we've come up to the area of the field where he identified he thought it might be. So what we're going to do is go up here, get our metal detectors out and see if we can find any evidence at all about ordnance being exploded. Thanks to our tip-off, we're reasonably confident that this field should contain some fascinating finds. But to get to them, me and the team face one seriously tough problem. This is ridiculous. On the news, they said that it was on the verge of being a drought in Leicestershire, and I thought, no, that can't be right. But when you see this ground, it's just like, it's like concrete. It's absolutely terrible to dig in. And of course, it's knacking you out within 5 minutes of starting to dig. After a bit of elbow work, however, the earth finally starts to give up its secrets. What I've just got out doesn't look like much, but what it is a 20mm or lichen cartridge. I can tell that from the base of the cartridge itself and the way that the rim is compared to the body of the cartridge. This is an anti-aircraft gun, a 20mm or lichen, would have shot big explosive shells up at low-flying aircraft. And that should be about that big. So this has been blown apart. And yeah, the only way it can be blown apart is in Peter's disposal pit. So more evidence. If this really is the site of a disposal pit, we could be on the trail of the remains of some seriously hefty ammo. From artillery shells to anti-tank mines. I'm hoping evidence from this site can help paint a picture of just how the Royal Army Ordnance Corps disposed of some of the war's most deadly weapons.
Even 70 years on, however, the fields of Britain house potentially deadly relics from our wartime past. When live ordnance is discovered today, it comes to places like the Kotec Weapons Testing Facility in Wiltshire. munitions expert Trevor Lawrence has offered to give me a hands-on class in the modern methods used to dispose of this ongoing threat. Hello, Trevor.
Pleased to meet you, so.
And you, mate. So is it safe to say you blow things up for a living?
That is one of the things I do, certainly.
So what does that involve exactly?
Well, what we're doing here is we're getting rid of unexploded ordnance, bits of ammunition that have been found littering around the countryside.
So we're talking about nearly 70 years since the Second World War, and you're still finding stuff from then?
Yeah, it's incredible, really, just how much still turns up week on week.
And it's hard to imagine, I think, for the modern person, that this stuff is still dangerous. I mean, it's all rusted and fizzled, isn't it?
And some things rust up and go solid, but other things can become more sensitive as they degrade with the rust.
So obviously the big push to get rid of all this ordnance came just after the war. Has the process changed much?
The big difference there is we can now do it in a much more controlled way than they could then, I think.
So obviously they're dealing with a huge amount and there ain't much time to be dealing with it. And
they didn't have many people, they had a massive amount to get rid of, they had to do it quickly. I would imagine, you know, it was a bit hairy at times.
there's not many jobs, Spitfire pilot, blowing things up that I can think of compared with being a pop star. Is there any chance we could blow something up now?
I think we can do that. Let's go and have a go, shall we?
Hello, Trevor. What have we got here?
Well, this is a selection of unexploded ordnance that's been dug up. Now, these are all safe to handle. They're not that sensitive, but what we're going to do is stack them together in a pit and destroy them all in one.
They look pretty rusted. You sure these are going to go off?
You wouldn't look too good if you'd been in the ground for 70 years either, but no, they're still full of explosives, so yeah, they're still viable, certainly.
All right, mate, so what we do now?
Well, if you want to grab yourself a set of gloves, I'm going to get down here in the pit, and if you can hand them to me, we'll stack them all together.
OK, OK. I didn't mean you didn't look dangerous, honestly. These rusty old pieces of ordnance might look knackered, but shifting them into the pit is still a serious workout. Crikey, the weight of that. So, that's a decent stack. What happens next, Trevor?
OK, so what we're going to do next is put the explosive charge on to initiate it. So, in this box here, this is actually the plastic explosive we're going to use to start off the detonation. You can have a squeeze of that if you want. Don't take it out of the bag.
I
though.
certainly won't. You got a light?
Yeah, probably not a good time to spark up just now. OK, thank you. And what we're going to do with this is we're going to place this on top of the stack that we've got here. So what we've got here is a plastic cord which is actually filled with explosive. We can run that out of the pit, put the end of the detonating cord into our explosive here. That's about as far as I can go now with anybody else down here. It's a one-man risk from now on.
All right, Trevor, well, I'll leave you to it, mate. I'll see you back at base.
See you back there.
Jolly good luck.
Thank you.
Fragments from the blast can travel over half a kilometre. So it's time for me to get behind some serious concrete.
OK,
Well, I'm in the bunker, Trev.
good stuff. OK. Sentries, can you give me range clear?
Range clear north.
Roger, range clear, stand by.
We're set.
OK, let's do it. Got a good circuit, and we're primed. Stand by, firing on 0. Ready?
Yep.
3, 2, 1, firing.
Whoa! Yes! Look at that. You can feel the building shake.
It was a good old bang, wasn't it?
Solid building. Up close, it's incredible to see the sheer power of this controlled explosion. And when replayed in slow motion, you can actually see the shockwave that travels ahead of the blast itself. It's the power from this that, long before any heat damage, could tear through even heavy armour. What an amazing, eerie place this is. And you think it's all just about blowing things up. Part of the process of an exploding shell is that it creates shrapnel. But when you think those guys were exploding that ordnance without this 5-metre thick concrete building,
That is dangerous stuff.
Next up, we discovered just how dangerous 1940s ordnance disposal could be. So health and safety really wasn't paramount back then.
No.
And we finally discover evidence of Garendon's own deadly munitions stash.
This bullet on its own is illegal to possess, so this has got to go down the police station.
We're digging on the site of an old World War II munitions storage depot at Garendon Park near Loughborough. We're hoping it's going to throw up some seriously explosive finds.
Well, it was great earlier seeing Stephen find real evidence of the fact that the Royal Army Ordnance Corps were here. But what would be really exciting is if he's found some direct evidence of how they disposed of these highly dangerous weapons after the war. All right, Stephen?
Nice, Suggs.
Been finding needles in haystacks.
I have found the needle in the stack of needles. Came up here looking for exploded ordnance, stuff that had been disposed of by the Royal Army Ordnance Corps, and we've started to find it now, so we've got that bit.
Brilliant.
Doesn't look like much, really.
Well, it looks like something that's exploded, which is what you're after, isn't it?
It does, and that bit is the wall to a big cartridge case, and then we've got that bit.
Which is the nadger that goes on the end of the what's name?
Definitely a nadger.
Yeah.
That's what it's going to be known
Yeah.
as from here on in.
Yeah.
That is the bottom of a 40mm Bofors shell. So, goes that way round. We've got the bottom of a 40mm Bofors. We think we've probably got the sidewall to a 40mm Bofors, and we've definitely got a projectile from a 40mm Bofors. This is a high explosive shell, so that would have sat on the top of the whole thing. Now, so as you can visualise it properly, I have brought...
Which I'm struggling with at the moment, to be honest.
I have brought from my own collection this little beauty,
Whoa there.
which is
Or are you just pleased to see me?
40mm Bofors.
Whoa, look at that.
So, if we get that against there, we can see that this is the same size. So this is a 40mm Bofors shell. If you look on the bottom, this, the way that that is there, is exactly the same as that.
Brilliant.
So we know we've got exploded 40mm Bofors shells up here.
And these, of course, were anti-aircraft missiles.
Yeah, there were. These were really useful in World War II. Staple airfield defence. They even used them in the Navy, on the ships. The blasted remains of this Bofors shell are a reminder of one of the most successful and widely used guns of World War II. Invented by the Swedish arms manufacturer, Bofors, this 40mm gun was used by both Allied and Axis powers. Mounted on a turntable, the gun could be swiftly manoeuvred by a small crew to target fast-flying enemy aircraft. So we've got evidence here of stuff coming from the country lanes to here, having the living daylights blown out of it and just left behind.
And a blooming dangerous pastime that was too.
Yeah.
Having seen the size of that crater at RAF Ford, you're starting to get a picture of why they were spreading this stuff about. You didn't want to leave it in one big dump and blow yourself to smithereens.
Exactly. The Bofors shell is a great find, but its presence at Garendon poses a curious question. The Bofors gun was used long after World War II, with some variants still in service as late as the Gulf War. So why was this perfectly useful ammunition being destroyed after 1945? Munitions disposal veteran Peter Peters is on hand to solve the mystery.
Well, those probably were returned, and they were probably had been deployed, maybe damaged by mishandling, or even put into a gun and taken out again, in which case they might be marked. And if we found one that couldn't be easily salvaged, we'd blow it up.
How on earth would you blow up something like this 40mm Bofors?
Well, so we used to stack them up, and then we'd put a slab of TNT on the top, and a primer and a detonator on a cable back to our exploder in the bunker, and we'd wind the handle, press the button, and be an almighty bang.
Would you necessarily be in a bunker, and how far away would it be?
We preferred to be in the bunker, but we could hide behind a tree or something like that.
So health and safety really wasn't paramount back then?
No, it wasn't.
Men of the Royal Army Ordnance Corps put their lives on the line to dispose of the explosives that still littered the countryside after World War II. For veterans like Peter Peters, it was a hidden side to the aftermath of the war that received little recognition.
It never occurred to me at the time that it could be extremely hazardous. We were never equipped to deal with it, but we just dealt with it, and it was the thing to do. And not only that, of course, discipline forced you to do things that you really wouldn't like to do of your own volition. I was demobilised with no thanks. I got no medal for what I'd done. All I got was my severance pay, and I thought I'd been abandoned. And yet, years later, I realised I'd done a very good job in getting rid of huge amounts of explosives from the rural areas of Leicestershire. And to come back and see relics being dug up is very satisfying and rewarding.
Use as an explosive disposal pit was just one of the many ways in which the army transformed Garendon. The work that went on here was vital to the war effort, but it came as a major shock to the aristocratic family who owned the estate, the Delisles. I'm meeting the present-day Squire Delisle.
Good afternoon, Squire.
Hi, nice to meet you, and welcome to grey Leicestershire.
So there were a lot of different things going on in the grounds here during the war.
There was a mixed group of army. As far as we know, the troops were happy here, and they had latrines, and they had cookhouse, and they had a fire brigade unit, and they had masses and masses of nissen huts all over the place.
The requisitioning of the estate by the army was compulsory. It was a pattern repeated all over Britain, as shocked aristocratic families saw their pristine lawns transformed into everything from parade grounds to shooting ranges and even training arenas for tanks.
My predecessor, commonly called the Old Squire, had a heart attack a few days after the army took over. He was shocked by the way they, I think, asked him to leave the house.
Was there begrudgment within the family about how the army had left the place?
They looked after it well, but unfortunately, in 1951, they forgot to turn the water off. So all the ironwork and all the central heating pipes blew up during a very hard winter.
Garendon Hall never recovered from the damage it received during the war and was finally demolished in the 1960s. By the end of the century, a third of Britain's landed estates had suffered a similar fate. Their demise, in many cases, accelerated by the damage they'd received during the war.
Back at the dig, I'm on the trail of the second lead given to us by veteran Peter Peters. He suggested that, as well as a disposal pit for damaged ordnance, Garendon also housed a munitions dump for the storage of valuable items of ammunition. A search of the exact area he pointed out has so far turned up dry. But luckily, I've got a backup plan. So that first location that Peter pointed out where he thought the ammo dump was, it's not there. Don't think it ever was, to be honest, judging by the lay of the land. So I've come to where my hunch tells me there'll be an ammunition dump. I think it's in this patch of woodland. The site's location, right next to a road junction, means it would have been a convenient location for an ammo store. The only problem now is that the area is heavily overgrown. But if we can get in among the nettles, we might just find what we're looking for. Hello. That's a 9mm cartridge. So the 9mm was fairly standard for British weapons. This was used in the Sten gun, the submachine gun. Wasn't particularly accurate, but it did fire the 9mm cartridge. The 9mm cartridge is a good indication we're in the right place. But if this really was a munitions dump, there should be a lot more finds nearby. There's a .50 caliber bullet. It's lying more or less on the surface in the leaf litter. So this bullet I can see has got a black tip. It's painted black on the very tip of the bullet. That tells me that this is an armour-piercing bullet. So in the centre of this, there's a hardened steel core which will punch through armour, and quite thick armour as well. This is a big .50 caliber bullet. The American Air Force used to use these an awful lot. and they do exactly what it says on the tin. Now, they won't pierce the really thick armour of something like a Tiger tank, but certainly they'd go through, I don't know, somewhere around about an inch of armour, I would think. They're quite powerful little bullets. Now, under Section 518G of the Firearms Act, this bullet on its own is illegal to possess, just this bit, so this has got to go down the police station.
Before long, we're uncovering a huge range of different cartridges. This sheer variety of finds gives a vital insight into the international role played by this ammunition sub-depot.
That's quite a collection, isn't it? And a real variety of calibre.
We've got 9mm cartridges from Sten guns. We've got .455 from revolvers. We've got 45 calibers, we've got 303s, 30 cals and 50 cals. These 30 cals and the 50 cals used almost exclusively by the American Army. This isn't British ammo, this is American ammo.
Because, of course, we have to remember at this point, Britain's the last free country in Europe. So, of course, all the ammunition's coming through Britain then to be distributed throughout the rest of the world.
That's right. So these guys are not just storing British arms for British troops, they're storing Allied stuff. This is for all the Allied armies.
We are determined not only to win the war, but also to maintain the security of the peace that will follow.
The discovery of American ammunition at this depot completes our picture of Garendon's contribution to the final stages of the war effort. In the run-up to D-Day, the UK became a hub not only for British ordnance, but for thousands of tons of American munitions shipped over the Atlantic. By 1944, Eisenhower commented that the UK had become one gigantic storage depot, and that only the great number of barrage balloons floating constantly in the British skies stopped the islands from sinking under the sea. In the 27 days after D-Day itself, over 565,000 tons of ordnance and supplies were shipped from Britain to Europe. And depots like Garendon played a vital role in that operation.
Next up, we take our finds to one of the UK's biggest 1940s festivals.
Yeah. Brilliant.
And give back one of our relics to a very special veteran.
Oh, Stephen.
We're at Garendon Park near Loughborough, which we've discovered was used as the headquarters for a giant wartime munitions depot, with ordnance hidden in hedgerows and woodland across Leicestershire.
Well, Stephen, it's time to down your tools and look back at what we found.
Different digs have really brought out distinct periods of what was going on here. Obviously, at the barracks, you've got all the Second World War stuff, the badges, and I'm loving all the boot polish and brill cream and all that. To think of these guys digging about in the mud and blowing things up, but still just as spick and span as any soldier who was out there fighting in Europe.
Yeah, you don't want to go on a charge for blowing stuff up without shiny boots on.
That's very, very true.
One of the really interesting things about all of the stuff on this table is those peculiar things just there. They're launcher cartridges from something called a PIAT, which is a projector infantry anti-tank. This is the British anti-tank weapon. It was like the American bazooka, but it was basically a dirty, great big spring in a tube. That's what it was. They shouldn't be here. We know they didn't do any training here, so why on earth are they chucking PIATs around?
Having a bit of fun?
That's the only thing I can think of.
That's, of course, what we have to remember. I mean, they were here till 1951, weren't they? So I'm sure at this point they're thinking, what on earth are we still doing here? Let's go and have a bit of fun in the woods with some bazookas.
Yeah, exactly.
So all in all, Stephen, a really marvellous day.
Yeah, it's been a fantastic day. We've got the evidence of everything we were looking for. We've got the barracks site, we've got the exploded ordnance, we've got the ammo dump. So we've got everything.
Everything, except the squire's statuettes.
You and those statuettes. Look how much we've dug up. I'm going to find those bloody statues now.
The land at Garendon will soon be built on, so it's more important than ever to share what we've found from this extraordinary site. Woodhall Spa 1940s Festival is a celebration of Britain's wartime heritage. The reenactors, amateur historians, and ordinary families who descend on this town are seriously passionate about our World War II history. So there's no better place to join in with the dress-up fun and show off what we found.
The work we're doing is to try and get this stuff out of the ground before it rusts away.
Oh, look at that.
Eh?
Little lighter.
Yeah, a little
Isn't
lighter.
that nice? It's a little lighter. Beautiful.
There were training in it, so all the lanes, the country lanes around Loughborough were just full of ammunition and gas shells and goodness knows what else.
It's great to see so many people showing an interest in our relics. But Woodall Spa isn't just a chance to share our own finds. It's also an opportunity for us to have a look at some of the other extraordinary wartime relics on show.
And among this year's exhibits is one familiar piece of weaponry.
Wowza.
Look at that beauty.
So what gun is this, Stephen?
40mm Bofors.
Absolutely, and they are the 40mm shells even I recognise that you found in the disposal pit.
We were finding the base of those and parts of the cartridge case itself, and we're even finding the big chunks of the projectile.
Which you gave me a very good lesson in sort of piecing together, but this is what they were really meant for, to be fired out of this thing.
Yeah,
Let's go and have a go.
does look like it's working.
I bet we could take out them Yanks over there at the back.
Aiming and firing the Bofors was very much a two-man job. So with a little teamwork, we can get at least some sense of how it would have worked in the field.
You ready?
Yeah. Brilliant.
Woodall Spa has been a great place to share our finds with the public. But to give back some of our precious relics from the dig, there's still one person I need to see again.
Ah, Peter.
Stephen.
Good to see you again. How are you?
And you, I'm very good, thank you.
Splendid.
Good couple of days we had at Garendon.
Didn't we just?
I brought some things to show you anyway. For a seasoned relic hunter like myself, it's fascinating to hear Peter's reflections on some of the huge hoard of ammunition we found at Garendon.
This one's British made.
British made?
Yeah.
But there's one particular item I really want him to see.
Ooh, a cap badge. My word. Sergeant Major would punish me for not polishing that.
That's for you. The important thing for me really is the work that you guys did, especially at the end of the war, clearing up this old ordnance and getting rid of all this really dangerous high explosive. That really needs to be recognised a lot more. The general public just don't understand that this kind of thing went on. Just thank you very much for all your help, both on site and giving us this great insight into the important work that you guys did.
It's been a pleasure and a delight to me.
The work of the Royal Army Ordnance Corps at Garendon was just one part of Britain's extraordinary wartime achievement in producing, storing and shipping the vast amount of munitions needed to win the war. It was an operation that ensured that, wherever the Allies were based, they were ready to fight. Whether it was the Allied soldiers on the beaches of Normandy,
or the Home Guard training in Sleepy Surrey. All of them were equipped with arms processed by depots like Garendon. The relics that lie hidden in sites like these across the country are a sometimes explosive reminder of the triumph of arms production that ultimately won the war.